Rem was excited. Ragna felt motivated and eager. Audun felt as if he had received an answer from Enkrid during their sparring session. Prayers to the Lord were always questions, with no answers returned. The Lord wielded silence as a weapon. It was up to us to find the answers within that silence. However, sometimes, just sometimes, Audun believed that the Lord provided answers. Even if he did not speak them aloud, he expressed them through other means. Through that day's sparring session, Audun felt he had received an answer from Enkrid. That was how it felt.
What can that man gain by trying so hard? Can his efforts bear fruit?
A human's efforts quickly led them to their long-standing questions.
Even though he commanded us to protect the weak, why does he not safeguard them? Why does he not reward their efforts?
The strong and the weak, good and evil. These were old questions. Why do those he considers evil thrive, while those he sees as good suffer? He had witnessed good, weak, and good, strong individuals being crushed. He had also seen evil thrive in the temple, which was said to be a foundation and cradle made by the gods. Why did the Lord watch this happen? Why does he not bring punishment? Why do the inquisitors only bind the powerless with thorns on the cart? Why does the Lord only watch? Amidst this, there was a man living with the reckless effort of trying to drink away the river, always standing before him, unchanging as the sunrise each morning. If there were a God, he should have provided an answer. He should not ignore someone who lives by burning themselves up like that. Was there really divine intervention? Audun did not know. He could not tell. But it did not matter if there wasn't. Knowing Enkrid and the days they spent together taught Audun something.
The question is within me.
And the answer was also within himself. He felt as if he had received an answer to his questions through their sparring. To speak honestly and frankly, a sense of relief filled his chest. It was enough to crush a few enemy skulls with this feeling. This brought Audun into the sparring with Enkrid. It had also brought Rem and Ragna. Perhaps no one knew this before, and no one would know it afterward, but at that moment, the course of the battle had changed due to Enkrid's fierce resolve. His sparring had shaken the hearts of all the platoon members and set them on the battlefield.
Lord, today I send those who will stay by your side.
Taking a life can be a sin, but it may also not be considered a sin. All religions reflect their times. This was true for Audun as well. His God did not shy away from taking lives. In other words, if necessary, he could do it. He could send those who would serve by the Lord's side without hesitation. Audun stepped forward boldly. His allies recognized him and whispered among themselves before falling silent.
Those who have received a coin from the goddess of luck should step back.
Audun showed kindness and mercy. Due to the fog, he could only see right in front of him. One of the enemy soldiers looked at Audun and sneered.
Are you trying to imitate our giant?
In a way, it might have looked that way. Audun gave a faint smile. He didn't feel displeased or upset. Sending the enemy to the side of the gods to seek forgiveness was all that mattered. There was no reason to get angry. At this moment, there was no place for a human's displeasure.
I don't need to pretend to be someone else, brother. Brother, my ass.
They stood facing each other, separated by only a few steps. Audun slowly began counting.
5.
No one knew what that number meant.
What the hell are you talking about? Kill him.
The battlefield had been set in motion by the arrival of the giant. The excitement had reached the soldiers. A soldier from Aspen's side thrust a spear forward. Audun deflected the spear with the back of his hand, gently pushing it outward. The spear lost its direction of force as it slid along the back of his hand. The enemy soldier almost stumbled but regained his balance.
4.
Audun continued counting.
You son of a...
The enemy realized that Audun's movements were not ordinary. The soldier gestured. He was in a position to lead a squad. Soon his squads surrounded Audun. Spears were the best weapons an infantryman could have. All of their spearheads were aimed at Audun. It was a situation where 10 men targeted one.
3.
Audun counted as he observed.
He's completely insane.
Even as he spoke, the squad leader felt uneasy. His back tingled and his stomach churned. What was that just now? How could someone casually deflect a spear with their bare hands? Was he wearing something on his hands? He did wear thin white gloves, but they didn't look like combat gauntlets. Besides, his hands were quite large.
2.
While he was thinking, the count decreased. The squad leader spat on the ground and said, "Pff,
Kill him.
The order was given.
1.
The last number came from Auden's mouth as well. This was a final gesture of mercy. If anyone had picked up a coin from the goddess of luck, they should retreat, mercy and kindness.
Just for today.
He had chosen to answer the call of the war god. He didn't need to become a disciple of the war god. It wasn't to that extent. Auden hoped for an opponent similar to the giant from the enemy side. Since he had decided to invoke the name of the war god, it was natural for him to want a proper fight.
Then.
Between the flying spearheads, he said calmly. One, as the word left his lips, Auden drew his weapon. It couldn't be called his favorite weapon. He had left his favorite weapon when he departed from the temple. This was merely a substitute, a wooden club soaked in oil. It wasn't studded or made of metal, but it would suffice. To the enemy soldier who thrust his spear, it looked as if Auden had disappeared. Of course, that wasn't the case. He had simply bent backward, almost lying down to avoid the spear. 3 soldiers had simultaneously aimed their spears at his chest. Displaying agility that belied his size, Auden rose to his feet, pushing off the ground with his feet. With a light swing of his club, he struck. With a single sweep of his club in an arc, 3 spears were knocked to the right.
Whoa.
As the 3 spearmen lost their balance and staggered, Auden took another step forward. Then, his club came down on an enemy soldier's head. With a single blow, one head was crushed. Thud, 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 thud. With each swing, 3 heads burst. It happened in an instant. Auden, despite his large build, was as quick as a squirrel.
Ah.
The rest followed similarly. Whether spears or throwing knives came his way, he dodged or caught them and threw them back. Then he would approach and smash heads with his club. Thud, and heads burst like pumpkins. No, the heads seemed even softer than pumpkins. A soldier from Norilia, watching from behind, clicked his tongue.
He's a monster.
Everyone knows that if you dodge and strike, you win. It's just that no one else could execute it like that. With each thud, a head burst. At first, it was just with his club. When the enemies started shooting arrows and charging, he began using his feet. It felt like watching a charging cavalry. Whoever he approached was knocked down.
Ha 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 ha.
Meanwhile, their monstrous ally let out a hearty laugh.
May the blessings of the war god be with you.
And he shouted again. He seemed completely insane. Of course, for the Norilia soldier watching, there was a sense of relief. After all, that madman was on their side.
Charge everyone.
The command unit quickly assessed the situation. With the changing tides, the entire army charged forward. Auden continued to rampage in the midst of the enemy forces.
You, where do you think you're going?
In the chaos, a few skilled fighters from the Greyhound unit challenged him. However,
Welcome, brother.
Auden feinted with his club, pulling it back before twisting his waist on his left foot and launching a kick. It was a kick that seemed like an extension of his log-like thighs. A light middle kick folded the opponent's body in half. What kind of kick has such power? It was as if he had iron shin guards on. With a single blow, the enemy's body bent in half. The impact caused internal organs to rupture, and his face turned red as his blood vessels burst. The struck enemy flew to the side, knocking down 3 or 4 other enemy soldiers.
What the hell is he?
To the enemy soldiers, it was bewildering. Auden fought like an anthill, consuming everything that approached him. The ferry company commander stared directly at the approaching figure. The opponent was also a ferry. It wasn't unusual to encounter and fight a fellow ferry in such a place. Times had changed. Gone were the days when ferries huddled together in the forest. A closed society tends to become obsolete, and when it becomes obsolete, it is forgotten. Gods and fairies alike would eventually give up their homes to invading hands. The choices of the fairies of the past had changed the lives of their descendants. Some traded their ages for krona. They became mercenaries or joined the military for other rewards. Thus, the ferry company commander, Sinar, thought there was little difference between himself and his opponent. Whether for krona or some other purpose, in any case, the fact that they had to fight once they faced each other as enemies did not change.
A needle sword.
The leaf blade was called Nidil. The needle sword, a pointed weapon designed for thrusting, was called Nidil. They were weapons specific to the fairy race, 2 weapons facing each other with different purposes.
So there are more of our kind.
The fairy from Aspen was a sharp-eyed male. He had short hair and a stubborn-looking mouth. Well, most fairies are stubborn. Even Sinner, a fairy, acknowledged this. The tip of the opponent's sword was red. Blood dripped from its tip onto the ground. The troops had backed away, forming a circle around the two. On one side was the company commander. On the other, a trump card prepared by the army.
If you run, I won't chase you down and kill you.
The male fairy spoke. As he looked at her blood-stained needle sword, Sinar also drew his sword. A metallic ring sounded. It was the Nadil, the leaf blade.
That was supposed to be my line.
Soon the two exchanged blows. The fight didn't last long. Sinar was a few levels above the fairy wielding the needle sword. Talent, skill, experience, and finesse. The male fairy couldn't surpass Sinar in any of these. After a few exchanges, the blade of Sinar's leaf sword grazed the male fairy's neck. Feeling the sensation in his hand, Sinar was certain of his opponent's death. The male fairy, clutching his throat, fell forward. Seeing this, Sinar felt quite displeased.
Bastards, aren't they?
It was a bait. The real threat came next. While he was fighting this man, he sensed the killing intent of at least 3 others targeting him. They used the bait to draw his attention and then strike from behind. They were trying to assassinate the commander this way. Their intention was obvious. The only unexpected variable was that the ally of this dying man hadn't arrived yet. That was why he died with his eyes wide open.
How sordid.
Of course, on the battlefield, being sordid could be an advantage if successful. Unfortunately for the enemy, they lost the chance to show their sordidness. The killing intent vanished. There could be 2 reasons. One, the enemy gave up and fled. The other, external intervention. The answer was the latter. A man was wiping his sword clean on the clothes of the corpse. His brown eyes had a hint of red. His hair, a similar reddish brown, had not a drop of blood on it. No, Sinar, the fairy company commander, had never seen this man covered in blood. He was always clean. Well, except when he was with a courtesan, his clothes would be in disarray. He had seen that too. The man was coming out after being with a woman.
Here had nothing else to do.
Jackson responded to the captain's words. Jackson was different. Seeing Enkrid's growth had filled him with joy. If he were around, he couldn't help but express it. His mouth itched, and so did his hands. He wanted to release this feeling somewhere. It seemed there were others who gave off a similar vibe. Jackson, emerging through the fog, followed the ferry company commander. He cut the throats of the 3 assassins. It wasn't difficult. Even though they were fairies and highly skilled by normal standards, to Jackson they were just okay. They were fighters who honed their natural talents rather than being properly trained. In a way, Jackson found them the easiest to deal with.
Are you just going to leave your platoon leader?
At the fairy's question, Jackson tilted his head.
If he were to die in such a place, he would have died long ago.
It was high praise. It was akin to saying he believed in Enkrid. He was now at a level where there was no need to watch over him anymore.
Next time.
It was time to teach him something other than just movement. After honing his senses, what was the next training? If he had opened the gate of 6th sense.
Observe well and respond.
These were things that still required time and effort to master. Had he ever taught such things properly? It didn't seem like it.
Sigh.
As Jackson thought about this, he sighed, wondering why he was being so serious. In truth, it wasn't something he needed to teach. Seeing this, the ferry company commander spoke.
This battalion commander is no fool. He knows how to fight by reading the flow.
Did she think he sighed because the unit wasn't moving? That wasn't the case. Jackson was always good at hiding his true thoughts. The ferry company commander did not misunderstand his sigh. Would that crazy platoon even care about such things? It was just that Jackson was right in front of her, demonstrating his skills by killing the 3 assassins. Her words suggested that the tide was changing. Her words reached not just Jackson but the surrounding soldiers. She implied that the momentum would shift, leading to a victory for their forces.
Form up, everyone.
At her command, the 5 company members who had followed her as guards lined up behind her. As soon as she finished speaking, horn signals blared from all directions and messengers ran. As she said, Marcus knew how to ride the flow. Marcus felt dizzy. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead, quickly making it damp.
These bastards.
His mouth went dry at the enemy's tricks, but he couldn't just stand by and watch. He was the commander of the current infantry battalion. The reinforcements had joined, expanding the unit to 2 battalions.
Turtle Company, hold the rear. The rest, hold back the giant. Don't break formation. Anyone retreating gets an arrow to the back of the head.
His deputy echoed the same orders. A messenger, having heard the condensed command, ran in all directions.
Damn it, just hold them. If you retreat, you die.
It could have been the worst situation. Forcing soldiers to sacrifice themselves would plummet morale, and once pushed back, gaining a strategic advantage would be a pipe dream. But there was no other choice. They needed time to regroup the troops. The horn sounded repeatedly. Marcus thought as he looked at the damp fog that obscured his view. What a damned and wretched environment. Hadn't they almost died in this crazy fog on a previous battlefield? That time it was fog created by magic. How did they resolve it back then? With the previous battalion commander's wit and tactics?
What a load of crap that not even a dog would believe.
He knew what kind of man the former battalion commander was, a nobleman who liked bribes more than his abilities. It was surely someone else who had broken the spell. Despite the secrecy, it was likely that platoon leader nicknamed the Spellbreaker. The soldier, with a stroke of luck, rumored to have slept with the goddess of luck. The soldier they sent to the cross guard, who even managed to handle the tasks there, something different about him. For some reason, that soldier came to mind at this moment. The soldier's name, who had been called to control the madman platoon and do something, remained vividly in his mind, Enkrid, as the thoughts connected and ended. Beyond the slowly dissipating fog, a figure, several heads taller than a human, came into view.
Insane.
A giant, the enemy commander must have been determined. Instead of fighting half-heartedly, they concentrated their forces and challenged the main unit. If this was a gamble, they had put all their chips on the table.
In the midst of all this, they do something like that?
It had been a series of shocks from the beginning, lowering morale with duels between soldiers, probing the rear, sending out a giant to overturn the battle in one move. Was this the work of a genius strategist, or was it a brute force strategy that happened to work out? He didn't know. The battlefield only speaks through results. Both achievements and victories do. Thus, if they lost here, Marcus felt it would be due to his own shortcomings. As anxiety pounded in his chest, he couldn't help but laugh. There was a reason they called him a war fanatic. In such situations, Marcus felt his desires and primal instincts surge. A chariot of desire, pounding in his chest, fueled his entire body with blood.
If we can just catch a bit of momentum.
Marcus was not the type to plan everything meticulously and devise a strategy. He was a gambler. The thinking was left to his subordinates.
We need to retreat. It will take at least a whole platoon to deal with a single giant. We must acknowledge that the enemy's move is lethal. We should regroup and engage them with archers, not turtle-heavy infantry.
Before his group of deputies, gathered for their brains, could finish speaking.
On the left flank, fairies and assassins are appearing, assassinating commanders indiscriminately.
What the hell?
On the right flank, more than a squad of war mercenaries are rampaging. They're elite.
It was chaos, a nightmare, yet Marcus's heart did not shrink.
It doesn't feel like it's over yet.
Ignoring the look of his deputy, who wanted to retreat, Marcus said nothing. Change, even a small one, would be good. If the direction of the wind shifted even a little, Marcus swallowed hard and waited. What if the winds of change didn't blow?
No, there's a chance.
When people gather, there are always exceptional individuals. There would be such individuals within the infantry battalion as well. What they needed was a small gesture to break the conforming wave. Marcus believed such a moment would come.
Commander.
The deputy shouted, almost defiantly. The urgency was clear. Meanwhile, a messenger came running. From a distance, loudly announcing the battlefield situation, the messenger's voice was so strained, it seemed he might collapse from shouting.
Urgent report. Urgent report. The giant has been slain.
Change, the change he had been waiting for, relying purely on instinct. It didn't matter who did it.
Counterattack.
Marcus shouted. It was the moment for the army's counteroffensive to begin. He displayed excellent ability as a commander. He was a skilled leader. With his command, the Norillia forces became like charging turtles. It was a circular assault formation centered around the turtle-heavy infantry unit. It was a large-scale group battle Marcus was confident in. The death of the giant was just the beginning. The winds of change started to blow fiercely across the battlefield, like a powerful typhoon, signaling the shift from summer to autumn.
Charge.
The voices of soldiers who became messengers due to their loud voices echoed near each company commander. The horn sounded the command to advance.
Charge, yeah, crush them all. Die, you bastards.
Bel joined in the charge as well, seeing Rem, who killed the giant, and the prowess of their allies who had withstood the giant's power, stirred his heart. It felt like they couldn't lose this battle. That was the sense he had. Infantry armed with spears charged first, stabbing the enemy like thorns. Squelch! The enemy ranks held firm. The trained soldiers of Aspen were resilient. They braced themselves with shields and armor, countering with their own spears.
Open up.
A shout came from behind their own spearmen. So what? Do they think they're as tough as us? The Turtle Heavy Infantry Company. 1st Company of the 4th Battalion, 4th Regiment of the Cyprus Division. Elite forces renowned within the unit, named after knights. Not a separate independent unit, but the core strength of the force. They moved into action. Their tactics were simple, and the overarching strategy was even simpler.
Advance, break, and shatter.
The Turtle Heavy Infantry Company moved not for defense, but for an attack. Their steps were slow but heavy. If the spear-wielding infantry at the front was the spearhead, then this was the warhammer. A warhammer meant to crush shields and armor. The primary equipment of the heavy infantry was usually spears, but what was needed now was a powerful forward charge. They advanced, having replaced their gear with blunt weapons designed to crush the enemy's shields and armor. The unit, clad in layers, first underclothes, then a gambeson, chainmail over that, and steel gauntlets and greaves on their arms and legs, charged forward. As they moved in formation, they resembled a charging mass of iron. 10 heavy infantry soldiers at the front all moved in unison. They raised their weapons vertically above their heads. The longer maces, casting shadows over the blood-soaked ground, were ready.
Damn.
One of the enemy soldiers muttered. The 10 heavy infantry soldiers at the front simultaneously brought their weapons down. The war hammers sliced through the air, smashing into the enemy's shields, armor, and poorly raised spears. Bang! Crash! Thud! Crack! A cacophony of sounds erupted all at once, mingling together. It was the impact of their first charge. There were no casualties among the enemy soldiers. It was a battle of formations. They didn't collapse in one strike. But the problem was what came next. The formations became tightly packed. The boundaries between them blurred, overlapping, like the sun and moon breaking down each other's boundaries before dawn. The soldiers of both armies fought to maintain their boundaries. The heavy infantry, fighting in place, showed their formidable power. With a second blow, a buckler shattered, sending splinters into the air. The eyes of an Aspen soldier holding the broken shield widened in fear. A war hammer came crashing down again, this time onto his helmet.
Kah.
A leather helmet couldn't absorb the impact of the iron blow. The soldier's skull caved in with a single strike, and he fell. The heavy infantry marched over him. Bones broke, faces caved in, and blood spilled. The weight crushed the life out of the body. Death was the only thing left for the soldier beneath the heavy infantry.
Advance one step.
The commander of the heavy infantry maintained the unit's proud formation. Slowly, step by step, they advanced, tightening the noose around the enemy. It was slow and deliberate, not a rush or charge, but the enemy had no room to retreat.
Sweep them away.
The company commander was filled with confidence, and rightly so. The tide of battle had suddenly turned. If there had been a knight in this battle, if it had started with a duel of knights, things might have been different. But the enemy hadn't fought that way. They hid their ace, only to reveal it and strike. But their own blade was stronger, a blade more solid than expected. No one could have predicted that Rem, known as a madman, would play with and kill a giant.
Ooh.
A roar split the air, rising into the sky. The soldiers were all fired up. Their eyes were red as they thrust spears and swung swords. Some even picked up and threw axes. At this point, Marcus's command shone again, after breaking the enemy's formation with the heavy infantry assault.
Shoot, shoot, shoot them all!
A unit maneuvered to the flank. It was a swift, light-armored archer unit, a ranger squad armed with short bows. An exceptional ranger who had recently joined the unit, led them. Her name was Finn. Upon hearing Marcus's orders, she understood what he wanted. Arrows flew. Though not many died from them, they simply kept shooting without holding back on arrows.
Surrender. Drop your weapons and bow your heads to the ground. Surrender and you won't be killed.
The cry was repeated. Several loud-voiced messengers echoed the command across the battlefield. Those on the outskirts, already demoralized and retreating, were further disheartened. Upon encountering Finn, they all had to drop their weapons and raise their hands.
Don't kill them! Don't kill them!
Finn deliberately spared those who surrendered. The effect was evident. Many began to bow their heads to the ground. It was the moment the tide of the battle completely turned. After killing the giant, Rem dusted off his hands.
Looks like the fight's over.
It had been fun up to this point. What was next? It was time to chase down and massacre the enemy, but he felt no enthusiasm. It wasn't out of some soft-hearted reluctance to commit a massacre. The battle was already won. Chasing them down was just a hassle. He looked around to see if the enemy had hidden another giant or something similar, but there was nothing. There was just some commotion among the enemy's command. They're going to flee soon.
Why not cast a spell or something?
But there was no sign of that. The momentum had shifted and the battle was over. That was Rem's assessment. He turned to find his platoon leader.
Where the hell?
Where did that guy go? He was supposed to watch from behind. He hadn't even properly seen Rem fighting the giant before disappearing, and none of the others, including the stray cat, were around. So, he must have left with one of them?
Huh?
He started feeling uneasy.
Hooray, mad platoon forever, long live Rem.
Thanks to killing the giant, people around were still praising Rem's name. Everyone he passed lauded Rem. The madman on their side had killed the enemy giant, who was crazed with slaughter. Most impressive was the final move. After seeing the giant wield a massive giant hammer, Rem had kicked the giant's thigh, and then punched the fingers holding the weapon, breaking them. He then launched himself into the airs, spinning, and with his head going toward the ground. Rem's foot struck the giant's chin. It was a powerful hit. Then he picked up a spear lying around and pierced it through the giant's broken jaw, up to the back of its head, creating a masterpiece. The fallen giant looked like a sculpture. Rem, standing before it, seemed like a hero from a story. Giants often appear as villains in novels, so it was natural for cheers to erupt continuously.
Shut up.
Rem yelled, even as people praised him. His voice was so loud that those around him, who had been praising him, fell silent. Then, the nickname they had for Rem shone brightly in their minds, like the moonlight.
Just a madman.
A madman who rants and raves without reason. A madman who gets angry and curses for no reason.
Where's our platoon leader?
Someone raised a hand and pointed in one direction. There stood Enkrid, holding 2 axes. He was already coming this way. Rem, Ragna, and Enkrid met.
Hey, I told you to watch.
I picked them up on the way.
Enkrid cut off Rem and tossed the weapons. The 2 axes cut through the air and landed in Rem's hands. Rem grabbed them with a quick motion. The grip felt good, comfortable in his hands. Upon holding and feeling them, they were better than what he had used before. Handcrafted weapons that had tasted blood. From the balance to the axe blades, these were well-crafted, high-quality weapons.
So you went to get these because my axes were broken?
A straightforward task as long as it got done. Enkrid knew Rem well.
Yes.
Rem nodded in agreement. Although they stumbled upon this outcome by chance, if it brought peace, so be it. The murderous aura that had been emanating from Rem softened significantly. The killing intent dissipated.
Did you see what I told you to watch?
Yes, I saw. The axe that stopped the giant, overcoming with strength.
Rem looked into his platoon leader's eyes as Enkrid spoke. The axes, thrown as a joke, were not what mattered. In his eyes there was a burning flame, a desire and passion that could be called ambition. A seeker, walking a path stained with blood to learn, grow, and find his dream. That was enough. This was why Rem liked Enkrid as a person.
Good.
Rem smiled. Enkrid smiled too. Their smiles were different yet similar. Ragna, observing this, murmured.
First, you need to attach the sword to your body.
Suddenly, Jackson appeared behind Ragna, having approached without a sound or warning.
When your senses ripen and the 6th sense opens, what's next? Refinement. Training each aspect separately and learning how to react. There's a lot to do.
Enkrid turned his gaze. He met Jackson's eyes and asked silently.
What does that all mean?
There was no answer.
Next time.
It seemed that this one, more than Ragna, had a knack for cutting things off.
This guy? Interrupting?
Rem glared. Before they could exchange more sharp words, Auden returned.
Whoa, our mad giant is stronger.
What an incredible cheer. Indeed, he had become a mad giant on their side. Covered in blood, smiling serenely, dripping blood from his sleeves, he smiled so purely. Was it a skill or just madness?
Do you know the core of Valaf-style combat?
This one seemed similar too. Enkrid's gaze turned to the mad giant. Auden flashed a grin.
Damn, everyone's butting in.
Rem complained. They all exuded a tense aura. Enkrid watched for a moment and then intervened. In the middle of the battlefield, regardless of the ongoing fight, these people were focused on teaching Enkrid, and these individuals were the true heroes of this battle. As Enkrid calmed the group of heroes, he asked,
But where are the others?
He noticed that Andrew and the others were missing.
They got swept up and went ahead.
Rem responded. Andrew and Mac drew their swords. Meanwhile, Henry repeatedly drew the bowstring of the short bow he had brought instead of a crossbow. He shot whenever he saw an opening. If an enemy approached unexpectedly, or if he saw a fallen enemy soldier on the ground, he would strike their head with a hand axe. Though he couldn't split heads in one blow like Rem, it wasn't as if the enemy's head remained intact. With a partially shattered head, blood flowing through the gaps in the helmet, and eyes filled with resentment or despair, they looked just like beasts he had killed. Henry turned his gaze away, thinking such reflections were a luxury on the battlefield. After all, that was all Henry did. The rest was handled by Andrew and Mac. Even if they weren't as fierce as those known as the Madman Platoon, they were still formidable.
Do you think the Grey Hound is a joke?
One of the enemy soldiers shouted, having taken down several of their own. He had a fierce look in his eyes, and blood dripped from the tip of the short spear in his hand. It took only 5 exchanges. He blocked twice, slashed twice, and then, with a swift thrust, he pierced the enemy with one hand. That thrust strangely resembled Enkrid's technique, at least to Henry's eyes. Mac, meanwhile, efficiently cut down the enemy soldiers, ensuring that Andrew didn't advance too far.
That's enough.
When Mac's words were heard, Andrew stopped dead in his tracks. Then he began to pound his chest with both hands.
Warg!
What was that? Why was he shouting suddenly? It seemed like he had learned something wrong from Rem.
Come at me. Even these barely matured whelps.
It was a clumsy taunt, and the chest thumping was utterly baffling. Still, in his excitement, Andrew fought well. Henry watched the two of them along with the others, from behind. Blood spattered across the tops of helmets, with the accompanying shouts, "Kill, kill." The shouts filled with murderous intent.
Please, no.
The desperate pleas for life. In the midst of the battlefield where life and death mingled, Henry realized something.
This is it.
While some cheered for the crazy platoon and others were moved by their actions, Henry saw his limits and realized that this was as far as he could go.
Warg!
Andrew let out a roar as his sword swished through the air, slicing through an enemy soldier's collarbone and neck. Squish! He pulled the half-embedded sword out.
Arg.
The enemy soldier's scream followed the movement of the blade. After realizing his limits, Henry longed to return to being a plains hunter. However, the plains he once knew had become a battlefield. Now, returning to the city and living as the husband of the flower shop widow didn't seem like a bad life. She, that widow, who lost her husband in the war and was raising a child alone, she was a strong woman. Henry missed the flower shop widow very much. He wanted to leave the battlefield and return to her immediately. It was fitting to end the life of Henry the hunter. Henry the soldier, here.
So sentimental.
Henry muttered to himself as he watched the battlefield nearing its end. The enemy commander was very quick on his feet. His judgment was swift. At some point, the commander's flag and his escort had quietly slipped away. Most of the remaining troops surrendered. Only a few resisted. The battle was coming to an end. In the midst of this,
Hail to the madman.
cheers, the likes of which had never been heard before, pierced the air. It was the cry of victory. The commander of Aspen's forces was fleeing in haste.
Damn bastards.
He was a capable commander, so he quickly grasped the situation. Who was it that overturned the battlefield? Where did the wind of change start blowing? The guy with the axe and a few others. Intelligence was needed. He had to inform them that there were dangerous individuals among the enemy, although he had already sent a pigeon. As a commander who had experienced it firsthand, he felt the weight of final responsibility.
I thought it was a false dawn. You bastards.
His heart sank. A sudden shout, a unit armed with various weapons blocking the rear. They seemed to be an independent force. They were not allies, definitely not. The eagle emblem on their right shoulders was clearly visible.
Did we lose because those guys weren't there?
The commander muttered to himself, his escort surrounding him tightly. But that was the limit.
The slaughter of the frontier bastards.
The enemy, Naurilia's proud combat unit, was the slaughterer of the frontier. They had bypassed the battlefield and secretly ambushed this location. Their purpose was to disrupt the returning enemy forces, reduce their numbers, and demoralize them. Originally, it would have been a meaningless move if the giant's blow had landed properly, but now it was a critical hit. The border guard was also taken aback. They were supposed to attack the rear and discreetly harass the enemy from behind. But what was this? The enemy had become a pack of pursued wild dogs. It was not the time to consider the situation carefully. The border guard captain did what needed to be done. Upon confirming Aspen's rear was undefended, he switched the strategy to an ambush instead of overtaking the rear positions. If the enemy hadn't come, they planned to return to their main force. But since they had come,
take them all down.
The border guard captain issued the death sentence. The enemy commander and his escort resisted, but the outcome remained unchanged.
Retreat, retreat.
The commander shouted as he charged forward. It was quite an impressive scene, shouting for retreat while not fleeing but instead charging in. It was clear he was trying to save as many of his soldiers as possible. Such an act deserved respect. The border guard captain stepped forward personally. Clang, clang, clang. In his hands was a flail, with the iron ball at the end spinning and the chain clinking.
I'll send you off properly.
The captain kept his word. The fight was brief. One side was originally a commander renowned for his strength. The other side was specialized in strategic thinking. The iron ball at the end of the flail moved in an erratic trajectory. The head of Aspen's commander shattered, with blood and brain matter splattering. That was the end of it.
Arg.
It didn't take long to deal with the remaining fleeing soldiers. With an axe embedded in the last enemy soldier's head, the battle concluded. It was a scene befitting the title of The Slaughterer of the Frontier. As they left the scene of the massacre behind, the border guard captain spoke.
Return to base.
The border guard quickly moved back to their main camp. Their intention had been to disrupt the enemy's retreat or cut off their supply lines, not to crack the commander's skull. How had the battle turned out like this? Curiosity, intrigue, and expectation mixed as they moved. And finally, what they saw there was their own forces cheering in victory. The victory on the battlefield was evident to all, marked by the overwhelming dominance they had displayed, and there was no question about who was at the center of it all. They were the ones who had shattered the enemy's prepared defenses in every encounter, and the man who led these warriors, the unit he commanded. Among the cheers, the name of the group resounded.
Madman Platoon, crazy, crazy, you crazy bastards.
Battalion Commander Marcus didn't stop the cheers. In fact, he made sure everyone knew who the heroes of this battle were. He had messengers shout the name of the Madman Platoon amidst the cheers. Enkrid and the Madman Platoon stood there, surrounded by a circle of their own troops. Torres also saw them and looked at Enkrid's face, thinking,
It's definitely a group of madmen.
Where was the normalcy in any of them, and though no one would admit it, from what he had experienced, Enkrid was also a madman, for many reasons, but the biggest one was
the fact that he thrives among those crazy bastards.
Wasn't that proof of madness? Moreover, he seemed to fit in perfectly. The ferry company commander murmured as she watched the cheers and the flow of the battlefield.
Spring has its own magic.
Spring, the season of gentle breezes, had returned. The battle, which had begun at dawn, ended around midday. As the sun passed overhead, a warm wind blew spring, like flowers born in winter and blooming in spring. The warm wind following the bitter cold always carried a certain magic. Before the magic of spring, signaling a new beginning. A man imbued with that magic stood tall, receiving the cheers of everyone. The ferry company commander's gaze followed the man cloaked in the magic of spring, Enkrid. The face of the man leading the madmen platoon came into her view. Enkrid enjoyed the cheers of the battlefield.
Not bad.
People shouting his name, calling for the madmen platoon. He knew who had changed the course of this battle. It was his platoon members who had done it. Rem had killed the giant. Auden had broken the enemy's formation. Jackson must have done something as well, though he hadn't asked or heard about it yet. But he was sure of it, and then he and Ragna had taken down those who appeared on the right side of the battlefield. The 10 mercenaries wielding deadly swords. If left alone, they would have cut down their own forces.
Well done.
It wasn't bad, so it was all right to enjoy these cheers.
Feels good, huh?
Rem laughed nearby.
Yeah.
Enkrid responded honestly as usual.
Seriously, you're such a straightforward person.
Rem grumbled, giving up on teasing him. Why was he so quick to accept things? Just then others returned.
Reporting back under Andrew's command.
No matter how much Rem beat him or how Auden threatened him with soft words, Andrew was proud to be the squad leader of the madman platoon. Just by looking at the blood speckled on their helmets, it was clear they had fought quite fiercely. Enkrid nodded.
Did you bring back a commander's head or maybe the giant's balls?
Failing to tease his platoon leader, Rem turned his sights on Andrew.
But I will keep moving forward. Whilst instead felt like I took down 200 men with my own hands.
It was clearly a boast. Everyone knew it was a boast. But everyone also knew that, so it didn't sound bad. There was a certain lightness in the atmosphere within the platoon.
Bullshit.
Rem ended the conversation with a chuckle. Ragna, too, seemed to have found a way to calm whatever had been boiling within him. He was now as relaxed and languid as usual. Most notably, Jackson was also smiling. And as for Auden, there was nothing more to be said. With his serene demeanor, he looked like a paladin summoned by the gods, especially when the light behind him shone just right. He gently surveyed the surroundings. Even while holding a club-stained dark red, the atmosphere remained calm. Kreis watched everyone and pondered.
How did things turn out like this?
It was one of Kreis's habits to deduce the cause from the result.
Did it start with that sparring session?
Kreis prided himself on being the most perceptive in the platoon. He sensed a peculiar atmosphere change after Enkrid returned and the sparring sessions began. Rem, Ragna, Jackson, Auden. The 4 who were the core of their combat strength had a change in demeanor. They seemed to be in better spirits? That was the simple explanation. Digging deeper, it felt as if some burden had been lifted. Could it have been from just one sparring session? They sparred daily, after all.
No, that's not it.
He remembered seeing the platoon leader fight Frog. He also saw him bite off the enemy commander's ear afterward. Whether it was the Valen mercenary sword technique or some other style, that wasn't what mattered. Kreis had observed his platoon leader for a long time. The same was true for the others.
Growth.
A remarkable growth. Even though they knew Enkrid would never reach the same level as them, they had helped him nonetheless. They wanted to see him rise, walk, and run. But all the platoon members knew. They couldn't ignore the reality that they had seen many who couldn't surpass the limits of their talent. No matter what Enkrid did, standing alongside them was impossible. But now, what was it?
Well done, everyone.
Enkrid stood before all the platoon members and spoke. Kreis, looking at Enkrid's back, felt a surge of emotion. He was the same platoon leader as always, yet different in a way. The afternoon sunlight, the warm breeze, the scent of the battlefield, the smell of rusted iron and blood, the aroma of death, all these elements blended together and then faded away. Kreis admitted to himself that he was under some kind of spell. Just looking at Enkrid felt like being caught in a captivating enchantment. It could be called the magic of spring. As the saying goes, spring carries a certain magic. The gazes of all the platoon members watching Enkrid became similar, and it wasn't just them. Battalion Commander Marcus, who had been observing from the side, had a similar expression as he approached.
Raise a cheer.
The battalion commander walked up and spoke. Marcus smiled at Enkrid, who turned to look at him.
A cheer for the greatest hero of the battlefield.
Amid the cheers and shouts for the madman platoon, the battalion commander's words spread widely. A cheer that seemed to break the spring sky erupted. Ooh-ah! It was the shout of those intoxicated by the joy of victory and the magic of spring. It was the joy brought by victory on the battlefield. Ultimately, it was a cheer for those who had achieved victory. Enkrid quietly enjoyed the cheer. It wasn't bad. Not bad at all. Under the command of Battalion Commander Marcus, the infantry constructed a new barracks. The new position was slightly more advanced than before. Enkrid thought the location was ambiguous, but he didn't voice it. Isn't establishing the barracks and determining the position the responsibility of the commander? Moreover, Marcus didn't seem like the type to handle things clumsily. You could tell just by how he called himself the greatest hero in battle. Nya, as they moved the base, Esther complained. Nya, Nya, she kept whining.
When you think about it, isn't this thing kind of strange?
She's a mystical creature, but there's something oddly peculiar about her. It's almost like she's human. The way Esther's words seemed to resonate in his ears, as if she was actually speaking. Right now it felt like she was saying,
It's annoying.
Thinking she was whining, Enkrid cradled her in his arms. When he first saw her on the battlefield, she was a very small panther. The next time he saw her, when she saved him from Mitch Hurrier and the mustached swordsman, she had grown a bit. After that, she didn't grow any bigger. She was just the right size to hold, and she stopped there. Yet, this panther had dragged him by the neck with incredible speed. What kind of strength was that?
Now that I think about it, you're a strong panther,
Enkrid said, stroking the head of the panther in his arms. Ka! It seemed like she didn't appreciate the comment. Esther bit Enkrid's finger. It didn't draw blood, just left a mark, if she had meant it.
My finger would have been bitten off.
Feeling a strange urge to check her sharp fangs, he looked closely at her mouth, and Esther glared at him. She behaved so much like a human.
Let's go!
Outside, Kreis called out. Establishing a new base is quite a complex and challenging task. You have to set up a new camp, verify the supply routes, redefine the perimeter, and reconfigure the scout routes. There's a lot to change, yet they insisted on setting up a new base.
By the way, platoon leader, I feel like I fought the hardest, but it seems like only the platoon leader is getting all the cheers. Am I imagining things?
No, it wasn't just his imagination. Somehow the atmosphere had shifted that way. Cheers for the Madmen squad, cheers for Enkrid. Remembering that moment just 2 days ago at noon made his chest tingle pleasantly. It wasn't a bad memory. As Enkrid remained silent, Audin, standing next to him, laughed and said,
My mad brother, it's because you took down a single giant.
A single giant.
My brother, I struck down dozens of enemy soldiers.
It wasn't just striking them, he killed them, quite brutally. Enkrid witnessed it too, that crude clubbing. It struck fear into the enemy and relief into their allies. It was that kind of feeling. Some allies who watched closely even felt a strange fear towards Audin. Vengeance had told Enkrid this directly.
Hey, that guy in your platoon who's deeply religious, why does he kill people with a smile? Is there something wrong with him?
Vengeance had said, tapping his head. Enkrid defended Odin, providing a suitable excuse. He's so devout that he feels joy in creating friends for the god he worships.
That sounds even stranger.
Vengeance muttered, but for Enkrid, that was the best explanation. It was 100 times better than being labeled as a crazy religious fanatic who loves killing.
10 mercenaries drunk on bloodlust. It would have been fatal if left alone. It probably was.
As Ragnar joined the conversation, the atmosphere began to grow tense. Then from the side, a comment from Jackson, who had been watching them silently, pierced their ears.
Idiots.
The three turned their gazes. A dangerous tension filled the air. A suffocating pressure surrounded them. It felt like a fight could break out at any moment if anyone made the first move. This was just like the original Madmen squad. When Enkrid wasn't around, they would test each other and keep a reasonable distance, but now their words flowed without restraint. Kreis didn't mind. He didn't feel any of the tension. Of course, it would have been problematic if Enkrid hadn't been there, but now they were moving together. Andrew, observing from the side, contemplated.
Should I step in?
Wasn't he the squad leader? Should he try to defuse the situation before the platoon leader intervened? Andrew hesitated. His past experiences of getting hit held him back. Just then, Mac grabbed his sleeve and shook his head. It was a gesture as if Mac had read Andrew's mind. Enkrid looked up at the sky for a moment. The sky felt different with the change in temperature. It was blue and clear with no clouds. It was spring. The weather was pleasant, so he decided
That's enough.
it was a good day to stop a fight. He didn't need to step in physically like before. Instead, he drew his sword, chiring, one with his right hand, then tiriring, one with his left hand. The sword drawn with his right hand slashed down from above in the form of a vertical cut, while the sword in his left hand swung wide in a horizontal cut. The step involved pushing his left foot forward with the right foot following. This was the sword-drawing technique he had been pondering for days. It was a modified technique from the Valen mercenary sword technique, originally designed as a dual sword-drawing technique, where the first draw was a feint. But here, both sword strikes were meant to be significant. The sword in his right hand aimed at Rem. The sword in his left hand swung at Jackson. The reactions of the two were starkly different. Rem blocked it with an axe, while Jackson had already stepped back and dodged it. One sword was stopped blocked, the other sliced through empty air. Enkrid sheathed the sword that had cut through the air.
What are you doing?
Jackson asked.
Want to give it a go? Sounds fun.
Rem snorted. His voice sounded amused. Suddenly, Esther, who was in his arms, thumped against his chest as he moved abruptly.
Let's do this,
Enkrid said, still holding his swords. It would be ridiculous to fight like this. With Esther in his arms, his chest was bulging.
Let's do it.
Rem, putting away his axe, nodded and said, it could be said it was a peaceful day. Enkrid sheathed his swords, calmed Esther, and continued walking.
At least that's a relief.
If he had been told to carry supplies, he would have been even more irritated. The packs of Enkrid and his platoon were much lighter compared to other soldiers.
Aren't you the heroes of this battle? You deserve a carriage.
Battalion Commander Marcus was generous, allowing them to walk with just their personal gear. Other units had to carry additional supplies and tent components. Naturally, their pace slowed, but Marcus acted as if there was no urgency. The commotion caused by Enkrid and his platoon drew the attention of nearby soldiers, but soon they returned to their routines. It wasn't the first time these men had quarreled. As Enkrid walked, he speculated about the future events. Would they strike the enemy's rear like this? He shared this thought with Kreis. Big Eyes shook his head.
They won't do that.
Why? If we've gained the upper hand, wouldn't it be advantageous to strike the enemy's rear?
Holding the enemy's base can give us a much greater advantage on the battlefield.
Enkrid tilted his head in confusion. Why wouldn't they fight? How is that advantageous? If they had an opportunity to strike from behind, they should take it. As Enkrid stared at Kreis, he began to explain. He spoke as if it was no big deal.
If we attack the enemy's rear now, we'll reveal our position and strength to the enemy, and they will respond accordingly. They'll likely send forces capable of countering us. If they've already used giants, fairy assassins, and mercenaries, what other options do you think they have left? Especially when their independent company, the Greyhound, has been half destroyed.
The question wasn't hard to answer. However, saying it out loud felt strange. Still, it wasn't a word to avoid.
Knights, at least at the squire level, or they'll increase their numbers. Although I think they'll likely send a small elite force.
Kreis's eyes shone as he spoke. He continued without waiting for Enkrid's response.
We've already taken advantage of the difficult terrain, and after facing our special forces, the enemy's morale must be affected. They'll likely try to repay us in the same manner. Of course, it's not out of fear of knights or similar forces that we're not attacking. As I mentioned earlier, it's about the benefits. From a broader perspective, looking at the battlefield as a commander, it's a matter of gains and losses. Even if you lose on one front, you can win the war if you gain significantly on another. From that perspective, it's better to hold our position rather than strike the enemy's rear. We don't need to expend our forces unnecessarily. Just being here keeps the enemy on edge. What do you think the enemy will do? They'll likely be quite confused. Meanwhile, our main force advances, so we don't need to fight. Besides, the enemy's commander, Aspen, won't have the resources to divert forces here. That's why we don't need to fight. The reason for establishing a base in such an ambiguous position is similar. There's no need to advance further to strike the enemy's rear. If the enemy tries something, we can simply retreat and then retake the position a day or two later. This current base is just a setup for that.
Enkrid prided himself on his straightforwardness. He had always been that way with his platoon members.
Short and to the point.
He understood about half of what was said, but the rest didn't quite stick. Kreis, whose eyes had been shining, took a few deep breaths. Yeah, you were talking without even pausing to breathe. After catching his breath, Kreis continued. There was no need to choose his words carefully.
It's like someone raising their hand to strike you from behind while another person holds your arms in front. How does that sound?
Sounds like a pain.
Yes, that's the situation the enemy is in.
If they tried to shake off the grip in front and block the rear, what would happen? Even if someone in front and behind swung simultaneously, one could block both quickly. But just standing there becomes an unsettling situation. Sometimes, just sometimes, Christ didn't seem like a regular soldier with simple ambitions, despite his big eyes and small dreams of opening a salon for noble ladies. For someone who dreamed of opening a noble salon, he had quite the sharp mind. It made one wonder if he might secretly be the son of some strategist or perhaps a hidden disciple. Predicting the enemy commander's thoughts based on the situation in front of him, as well as the movements of their own commander and main force, led to such thoughts.
Of course, this is all just speculation. If the enemy commander decides to say, forget it, I'll just kill them first, then they'll come at us, knights or not.
Craze verbally expressed doubt, but his eyes conveyed a different message. He was an enigmatic guy. Enkrid nodded, so there won't be a battle. Knowing that was enough. Still, being here wouldn't be boring. Setting up the new base was the responsibility of other units. While they set up tents, lit fires, and prepared food, Enkrid's madmen squad settled in one area. As soon as they did, Enkrid called out to Rem. It wasn't necessarily about who was first, but implicitly, Rem always took the lead. Otherwise, you never knew what this wild barbarian might do. Ragnar, sitting with his rear on a suitably warmed rock, turned his gaze. Jackson, Auden, Andrew, and Mac all looked at Enkrid.
Let's begin.
Enkrid said, and Rem grinned, revealing his sharp canines. That's right, that's our platoon leader. It was a smile that spoke volumes. Rem was still satisfied, and along with that satisfaction came a hope. He hoped this guy wouldn't die here.
I'll say it up front, you could die.
That's fine.
Death was not an obstacle for Enkrid. He was living a life where today kept repeating itself. The torn, rolled, faded, and vanished dreams lay before him. Enkrid's eyes gleamed with passion and desire. In front of him, Rem showed a similar look in his eyes. When had he ever seen a person like this? Never. This man, this continental man, was truly crazy. Rem chuckled.
Good. Let's do it. Let's see if we can die.
Rem spoke and nodded. It was time to learn something new, specifically what Rem had shown against the giant. Enkrid felt a thrilling excitement, yet also a strange calmness. It was a peculiar state where excitement and tranquility coexisted. It was a sign that the heart of the beast had ripened perfectly.
Here.
Rem started, not caring who was watching. Right in front of the barracks, not in a corner or out of sight, but in the middle of everything. Grabbing Enkrid's wrist, Rem placed it over his own heart and twisted his lips. What should he say? Even the smile had a playful mischief to it. Then he began to whisper to Enkrid. It was quiet enough that only someone trained by Jackson in keen hearing could catch it. Speaking softly like this, conveying what he wanted to say, was a skill in itself. Ignoring the stares around them, it seemed like he was determined to do this.
What you need is faith, and then you explode the heart. If the heart of the beast is ripe, try bursting the heart just enough so it doesn't shatter.
Rem spoke only the necessary words, saying nothing about the ritualistic effect that was taking place. Enkrid followed his instructions. If he hadn't trusted Rem in the first place, he wouldn't have attached the heart of the beast to his body. Rem found that quite satisfactory. There was sincerity in Enkrid's attitude, responses, and actions. He always put in his best effort. However, doing it the same way this time would ruin everything.
Take it slow.
Rem's warning was like a sharp blade. There was an unprecedented seriousness in his tone, a seriousness that was entirely different from his playful mischief. It made a strong impression on Enkrid. It seemed to imply just how dangerous this was, so he slowed his heartbeat. But could he really control his heart at will? At that moment, he began to feel Rem's heartbeat through his palm. Thump, thump was explosive. The energy within the heart seemed to transfer clearly to Enkrid's hand.
Do the same. Only about half of that.
So, this was it. Enkrid waited for that sensation, the sensation of making his heart beat. It couldn't be explained with words. It couldn't be expressed through actions. It was simply something Rem demonstrated and passed on with his body. It was purely in the realm of intuition. And so...
This might just be my needless worry.
Rem muttered. Should he consider this obvious?
Just one more time.
Enkrid said. Then Enkrid and Rem stood still, their palms over each other's hearts, until the sun passed its zenith and began to dip.
I'm really curious. Do you sometimes do this on purpose, or is it just my imagination?
Enkrid let out a short groan.
I agree with that.
Ragnar nodded in agreement.
I can't deny that either, crazy brother.
Agreed. Auden and Jackson also nodded. It felt a bit unfair to say it was intentional.
Is it that you can do it but aren't doing it, or is it that you can't?
Rem asked seriously, and Enkrid responded with the same seriousness.
Yeah.
Well then, let's do it. We'll try again tomorrow.
It was already evening. Thanks to the battalion commanders and surrounding soldiers' consideration, they weren't even assigned meal duty. They were excused from their usual tasks, so they could continue focusing on training and practice. However, Enkrid hadn't made any real progress, not even a small step forward. At least, that's what Rem thought.
What are you doing?
What am I doing now? Are you teasing me?
Come on, do it. Now, go ahead.
Enkrid kept hearing similar words from Rem. He couldn't grasp the concept at all. Was that a problem? No, it wasn't. It wasn't like he had ever mastered a technique in one go before. There was a time when he felt something like talent while training his left hand day after day, as if some talent had descended upon him. In that moment, he could feel something with his body. The moment when his skill with his left hand became instinctive, that brief time when exhilaration filled him. Does he miss that moment? Not at all, genuinely, not at all. He just kept repeating and pondering over and over. He was busy thinking.
The battalion commander is calling for you.
It was another day spent in constant contemplation, struggling to ripen the heart of the beast and make it burst, but to no avail. It was the third day after establishing the camp. Finally, the battalion commander called for Enkrid. When it came to commendations on the battlefield, it seemed like he would call immediately. Now it seemed things had settled down. According to Kreis, this was to be expected. He said that Marcus was probably very anxious while moving the camp and establishing a new base. When asked why, Kreis gave a lengthy explanation. To summarize, it was simple.
If they know you're just standing there, they'll eventually ignore you, so you have to at least pretend to move so they can't ignore you. If it were me, never mind.
Kreis seemed to have a thought but held back from speaking further. Enkrid didn't push for more and continued on. If Kreis wanted to share more, he would do so in his own time. It was also time to respond to the highest commander's summons. The adjutant came personally to fetch him, and on the way to the barracks, the ferry company commander joined them. With silent, light steps, the company commander approached and spoke.
When was our engagement again?
Here we go again. Enkrid found it hard to understand fairy jokes.
Let's plan it for 10 years from now.
Not bad, but I prefer younger humans to old ones.
The meeting would only happen if Enkrid had a preference for fairies. Although possessing an otherworldly beauty, she had a face that didn't seem human enough to stir affection. Between her thin, long eyelashes, her eyes sparkled like green gems, and her golden hair reflected the sunlight, giving her skin an almost radiant glow. That's what made her otherworldly beautiful.
Shall we go?
Enkrid acknowledged his defeat. It could go on endlessly if they kept up this banter. He felt it was a bit wasteful. The ferry company commander seemed to enjoy teasing him just this much. Honestly, he didn't find it particularly uncomfortable. It was just who she was. More sane than Rem, but still, perhaps even among fairies, there were some who were a bit half-crazy.
Let's go.
With the adjutant leading, the ferry company commander on his left, Enkrid entered the barracks.
You're here.
Battalion Commander Marcus was there. Having been through the battlefield, his beard had grown scruffy. Seeing this, Enkrid realized his own chin had become quite rough. He thought to himself that he should shave when he got back and saluted. He showed respect by pressing on his sword hilt and bowing his head.
All right.
Marcus nodded slightly. The three of them stood together.
Bring some tea.
At his command, 3 cups of tea were soon placed before them. It wasn't high-quality tea by any means, but being on the battlefield, having tea at all was a luxury.
When I go into battle and can't have good tea, I usually get annoyed, but this time, even this is satisfactory.
Battalion Commander Marcus was the first to speak. There was no place to sit, so they stood around the table used for strategizing and discussing tactics.
What do you think about working properly under my command?
He made the suggestion just as Enkrid was taking a sip of his tea. The ferry company commander remained silent. Enkrid looked at the battalion commander, contemplating how to respond, then decided against overthinking it. Since when had he tried to flatter his superiors?
I'll decline.
Why, I think I'm a pretty solid leader.
It wasn't incorrect. When Enkrid was told he was meeting the battalion commander, Kreis had vaguely outlined the situation. From why the meeting was delayed to what Marcus might say, it almost seemed prophetic. How could everything Kreis predicted be so accurate?
He'll probably propose that you join his command. He might even call our company commander as well. Why? To formally acknowledge and nurture your potential. And why aim for command? Do you even need to ask?
Chryas had said this with a look that suggested he couldn't believe Enkrid didn't understand. Finally, when Enkrid kept staring at him blankly, Chryas had spoken in a bemused tone.
What did you do with the cross guard?
I fought, did some infiltration, set some fires, and gathered intelligence on the way back.
Even if you don't know about Frog, what did you do behind the lines?
I fought, killed the commander of a detachment that attacked the rear.
And at the front?
I fought, you were there, why are you asking?
Chryas had witnessed these events while following him around.
The battalion commander knows.
Knows what?
He knows about all the fights you've been in. So knowing that, how could he not want you?
While it seemed he should have ambitions for Rem or others, Enkrid quickly understood Chryas' point. Rem and other platoon members were uncontrollable, but he was a stable person. The reason he hadn't noticed earlier was obvious. He had been preoccupied with trying to get the heart of the beast to beat anew. He had poured all his energy into training and practice. Thanks to Chryas' timely comments, he wasn't caught off guard.
It seems as I predicted.
The battalion commander spoke, and Enkrid, clearing his brief thoughts, replied.
To some extent, yes.
Can I ask why you're declining?
If he explained his reason right away, would they make him leave without finishing his tea? The warm tea was somewhat improving his mood. He felt as if he had been solely focused on his heart for days, and was now finally relaxing.
Now that I think about it, I've only just started to relax my shoulders.
He wondered if he had tensed up again. Has the pressure to learn become a chain binding him, a shackle preventing him from moving forward? He felt a sensation as if chains inside his mind were breaking and scattering. It only lasted a few seconds, but Enkrid felt he could speak with a much lighter heart than before. He took another sip of tea. Then he looked up straight. Even though he felt lighter, the words he was about to say were not light. Marcus's proposal was an opportunity that couldn't be missed if one had ambitions in the military, especially for someone like Enkrid, who started with nothing but a lowly soldier's position. Despite that, he prepared to decline.
I have a dream.
Something he held in his heart, no matter if others mocked him for it. A dream he never forgot after picking up the sword. A dream that had sprouted into reality, nourished by his burning desire. He had spoken of it many times, but it never carried as much weight as it did now. It had been stained by ridicule, torn by disdain, faded by sarcasm, and ultimately left in tatters. But now, the remnants clearly defined him. Every day they walked alongside him, showing that they were part of him.
I want to become a knight.
So Enkrid spoke. At that moment Marcus saw a vision. A chill ran down his spine, and he saw a different scene behind Enkrid. A battlefield, a sword, something shiny.
What is this?
It was a sincere, wholehearted statement. Not just a refusal, but the words of someone moving forward. Marcus felt a similar emotion in his own chest, something he had given up on long ago. What had his life been like? He had once aspired to be a sword for the royal family. What was his life like now? Marcus ground his molars unconsciously. The muscles in his jaw tensed, and a headache throbbed in his head. Seeing such a pure, radiant dream made him feel as if he was being questioned.
Do I really have the right to lead this man?
Was his offer merely a sordid attempt to climb higher, to gain more power? He lacked true loyalty. He had no dream of higher aspirations. It didn't make sense to take in such a person if he was content with the status quo. This brief realization caused Marcus to speak without thinking.
Huh.
A sigh escaped, laden with emotion. The fairy, known for her keen sensitivity, understood the meaning behind Marcus's sigh.
From just a single word?
The mind of a human was like waves stirred by a storm. Unlike fairies, who were consistent, humans were fickle, prone to change their decisions on a whim. The mind of the man now called the battalion commander seemed to be in turmoil, like a small boat in a storm tossed by waves and unable to find its direction. And then,
I will follow the path to becoming a knight.
With these words, Enkrid saluted. Marcus nodded reflexively. Enkrid stepped outside. The fairy company commander worried that Marcus might act out of jealousy or envy. Humans could be unpredictable like that. Marcus let out a deep sigh, standing with his brow furrowed for a long time. As the tea in his hand cooled, he seemed unaware of the fairy company commander standing beside him. He let out another sigh and then smiled.
This is something.
The ferry company commander sensed a certain relief in Marcus's laugh. Indeed, he was smiling in a refreshed manner. Then Marcus abruptly asked,
What do you think? Will he become a knight?
I don't know. That's up to him. They say fairies always speak straightforwardly.
rather than hiding the truth, fairies are known to use the truth as a weapon in their words.
It's been a long time since I felt my blood boil.
Marcus muttered, What happens when his blood boils? Marcus was undoubtedly aligned with the nobility. Norelia, despite being a centralized state, was said to have lost some power to the nobility. This scattering of national strength had made their struggle with the Duchy of Aspen challenging.
Aren't you leaving?
I'm going.
After the ferry company commander left, Marcus walked to a place with a chair and sat down. A few words had left him sweating. He felt strangely good, yet also troubled, and he made a decision.
Becoming a knight?
He couldn't laugh it off. How could he mock someone's dreams spoken with such sincerity? He was merely stirred by it.
All right, then I will.
Instead of following the damn noble faction, he would move towards something truly new. It was something he had pondered for a long time. The fork in the road before him. A crossroads where he had yet to make a choice. Marcus's hand went into his pocket and came out holding a letter. A letter he had received a long time ago but had ignored. A relic of the past he hadn't been able to discard.
Very well.
Marcus's eyes gleamed as he held the letter. It was the look he had in his younger days, eyes burning with passion. At the corner of the open letter, the royal seal was faintly visible.